Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reality's. Excuse me, I had a frog in my throat. Welcome to Reality's Breakdown. Tonight we're going to be discussing atheism in the black community. We have Sir Chad of Denver, Matt the Apoplectic Atheist, myself the Belligerent Atheist, and we have our special guest, Buddy Mathis. Don't forget to stick around for our Atheist Spotlight later on in the show. We're also going to be doing our Scripture of the Week as well as our news segment. And tonight's host is going to be Sir Chad of Denver. Chad, take it away.
Thanks, BA. And just wanted to give special welcome to Buddy, who I had the pleasure of kind of getting to know through Rational Thinkers Group. And Buddy and I had a brief discussion online last weekend, and really got a chance to know Buddy and really felt that he has a compelling story to share. And without further ado, I'd like to get into it. Buddy, is that okay with you? But if you could, tell us a little bit about your past and how you got to where you are now. Was there an aha moment where you decided that religion and belief in God were not for you?
Buddy is muted. I can't hear him. Can you guys hear him?
Buddy, can you unmute your microphone?
Well, it showed that he's unmuted down in the...
He might have a mute on his headset or something.
Yeah, maybe. He might have accidentally hit mute on the headset and then mute.
All right, we'll try this again here. Buddy, can you hear us? Give us a nod yes if you can hear us. Okay. We can't hear you, so we'll have to figure out how to get this resolved here.
Sorry about that, everybody. Everything was working perfectly right before we started the show, and now we're seeming to have technical difficulties. Buddy, you don't happen to have a mute on your headset, do you? Or maybe your computer is muted down in the lower right?
Can you have him sign out and sign back in really quick? Would that work?
Yeah, we can see if he'll drop real quick and then come back in. Maybe that'll help.
Perfect. Buddy, why don't you reconnect, and we'll get you set up in a second. Cool?
Well, I guess in the meantime, you could just talk about from your side of it, maybe, Chad. Or what do you think?
Sure. From my personal experience in talking and getting to know Buddy briefly, we spent about 2 hours in a chat. And Buddy, can you hear us loud and clear now?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yay, we've got you back.
Okay, there it goes.
I'm not sure what happened, but regardless, let's continue on, shall we? I'll first question for you, if that's okay. If you'd be so kind, Buddy, just tell us a little bit about your past and how you got to where you are now. And was there an aha moment where you decided that religion and belief in God were not for you?
Well, for the most part, the big aha moment came from me actually going to church one day when I was at a really low point. But I never really had too much of, a lot of religious indoctrination coming up. My dad's an atheist, and my mom, I believe, is a Baptist, but they never pushed one side or the other on me. I was never pushed by my father. He never said one thing one way or the other. And my mom never pressed me to go to church or anything like that. So I could kind of see both sides, but nothing really, mattered one way or the other. But then as far as me actually having my, come to Jesus moment, it happened actually going into a church one day where I went into this mega church when I was, kind of feeling down, and a friend of mine, invited me over. And when I came to this church, I just noticed that it was just like a big theater. It just seemed like a big play. And when I realized that it was just mostly theater, I just realized, I'm like, this is a farce, this entire thing. So from that point on, I just kind of realized after everything that I saw there that there's nothing going on here but just a bunch of people trying to, get your money and trying to con you, or just try to follow their word, but they're not really looking out for, the betterment of humankind. And if there was really a God going around, he he wouldn't let these kind of things happen. So I was just kind of gone from there.
So we talked, like I said, the other weekend for about 2 hours. It seems like the time just flew by. You shared with me a little bit about your past and kind of where you're at now. Can you bring us up to speed with kind of how you grew up and all that? You said your mom was a Baptist, your dad was an atheist. You've got a family now, obviously, and that's an integral part of who you are, right? And so maybe you could expound a little bit further on kind of like your dynamic now, your situation.
Well, as far as really with the family, my mom was in the military, so I moved around a lot. So I never really got to kind of sit down or anything with really my family at large until really within the last 5 to 6 years or so. So I've really been kind of distant from them in every way imaginable. With my family now, it's a lot easier to kind of manage. Like I have two daughters, and my oldest daughter, she we just basically we didn't lie to her. Like when it came to the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus or stuff like that, we just immediately went to no, we're not about to go for it, and she was okay with it. It wasn't, she was basically ahead of the curve when it came to some of her, colleagues and friends. And so she was just like, oh, okay, so she can kind of see the BS, early on. And so it got to the point where now she's like that on a consistent basis. She doesn't, she's not a believer, and she's okay with that. Like other people have more problems with it than she does. I've had kids when she was like in third, fourth, fifth grade, having a problem with that, and like, oh, you don't believe in God, and you're this and that, and she's just like, it's not a big deal. She's still a decent person. We're still decent people, without all of that. But belief or non-belief, I always try to not just let it completely run my life. I just try to make sure that I treat everybody with an even hand mostly, and just let that be that. I know believers, I know non-believers, and we can kind of all coexist. We have to. It's really the only way possible. It's not like we can just kind of section everybody off.
Got it. So next question I have, buddy, is how would you describe the pros and cons of being an atheist in a predominantly religious Black community?
Everybody assuming that I'm religious, or especially, I mean, Black or white, especially down here. I live in the South, and in the South, everybody's just, I can't say everybody, but a good majority of the people are religious. I can even think of just today, I think I was told have a blessed day at least 4 or 5 times, and someone told me that, I got up today and the Lord told me that I was able to do this in my life, and and to me, I'm just kind of like, I just smile and kind of push it off. But it's just that it's just so much of a fabric of people's lives. And for me, I'm just kind of like, I'm waking up late on Sunday. I'm not going anywhere on Wednesday night as far as to like a big church event. I don't want to. Like, there's so much other things in life to live. So, with people having these expectations, being invited to churches, and just automatically thinking because you are who you are, what you look like, that you're going to have to be a certain way. And it's not that at all. Like I'm, believe it or not, I'm used to being the token everywhere I go to, where no matter what it is, if I'm at a rap show, I might be the only one who likes Sheryl Crow. If I'm with my geek friends, I might be the only one that doesn't like DC, or I'm around my predominantly Black friends, but I'm the only one with a white wife. I'm always the token somewhere, so it's just kind of like something that I've kind of fit into on that. So yeah.
Got it. What would you say grinds your gears the most about religion and or religious people?
The lack of acceptance. The lack of acceptance is the biggest thing. Or when people form their beliefs based on what they get from religion or religious texts, and then they try to make it seem like the idea was all of their own. I know people who try to say that they're, really tolerant of others, and they're some decent people, but then they'll say things along the lines of, well, this is just how it is, gay people are whatever, but this isn't how the Bible says be, so it is, that's how it is. Or they won't even bring that up, but the only rationale they have for not liking something or accepting something is because of what the book says. And I'm like, so are you cool with us all being slaves? Because that's totally in the book. So that's my biggest thing is I just don't understand the intolerance. Like I saw recently a picture of an interracial couple, at an anti-gay rally where they're talking about they don't want two men to adopt or two women to adopt a child. And I'm like, your relationship wasn't valid about 50 years ago. Like they don't see you as having a legitimate relationship. There are people who are still alive that were contesting your existence, your relationship then. How do you grow up and not understand the irony of what you're doing? So that's really what gets me is the hypocrisy. That's the thing that grinds my gears the most.
Awesome. What would you say, buddy, are you doing to encourage and ultimately help others embrace reality?
I try not to just be argumentative for the sake of being argumentative, but I do try to really point out reason and logic when I see people just kind of throw it out the window. Where, I'm sure we've all seen that meme about why did God let the kids get shot in the schools? Or because God's not allowed in school. And just about every time, like I damn near have a copy and paste comment of what I have to post on there because I'm just like, no, no, no. Like I have to kind of get in that and just I don't even bring it always from a non-religious standpoint, but that's where it ends up coming from with some people. They're like, well, God says, well, you know what? No. There are people who, are going to do right, the actual right thing, regardless of what a, textbook of any sort says, whatever a deity you believe says. So I'm always trying to just bring people to the forefront and just lead by example. That's my biggest thing is because I feel that I'm a good person. I try to be nice as possible. I try to be even-handed. I don't want violence and drama and all those things. And so people assume that I am religious because I am such a good and cool person. And then when I tell them I'm not, then that's kind of when they get a shock. They're like, oh, wait, you're not a baby eater? And then like you're as cool as you are, you're as nice as you are, but you don't believe in our God and you want us to do nothing. But it makes people think when they find that out. And so that's really what I try to bring to the forefront when it comes to my conversations with a lot of people.
Awesome. Great response. If you were to share with someone how being an atheist has changed your life, presumably for the better, what would you say to them at this very moment?
It's changed my life for the better because for me, I don't have the stress of thinking that I'm flawed just because I'm born in the face of someone else. Like I'm not sitting around thinking that I have to be better than the next person because I'm so this or I'm in debt to the God or this or that. I feel free to live my life without anything being predetermined. I don't believe in all the fate and all that. It's just there are no strings on me. And that's been the best thing to happen in my life, to just be free to just live and not think that someone is looking down on me with such hurt and hatred, or that every single move I make is just being looked upon and frowned upon for whatever the case may be. And it just feels good to be free to just live life, and I don't have to be so judgmental or think that I have to down somebody else in order for me to get into heaven, to get my riches, or whatever the case may be. I'm alive now, and I'm going to live my life as I should right now. And because when I die, I'm not going to be able to do it again. So just let that be.
All right, thank you. That was great. So you mentioned about people assuming that you are religious in the South. In the South, that is common for most people to assume most other people. I'm wondering, is there a specific stigma when other black people find out you are an atheist?
They're definitely shocked, if anything else. Like a lot of them don't know how to take it well. But interestingly enough, I lived in Texas for a while, and two of my very good friends were actually very religious. I actually know one whose father was a pastor, and he was very involved in the church. And I actually know another one. It's a woman, and she's a pastor. She is directly she does co-pastoring with her husband, and they took it fine. We had like we never got into arguments about religion ever. We actually were some very cool about it. Like we would talk to each other, and even though we didn't agree on how, as far as if there's the God or anything, we agreed on so many other things. Because again, I'm a nice, cool, peaceful person, and I can get along with so many people, and it wasn't an issue getting along with them. Um, some of the other people are just kind of like they really don't know how to take it because they're just like, you're black, how do you not believe? And then I go, you're black, how do you believe? Like, I don't understand that part. But um yeah, it's a lot of people, they take it in various ways, but for the most part, I have people, like I said, be real cool about it strictly because I'm as good as I am. Like, they don't see me just, getting in a flame wars with literally every single person that I talk to. And I don't just, troll every single, comment that I see run through my feed. That, I'm really big about ignoring some of the stuff until they start, proselytizing about things that are going to be hurtful. When they start getting into those things, I do speak up, and I'll definitely get on that. But I get on that from the perspective of other people have lives to lead, and if it's not going to hurt you, kill, maim a child, a person, then chill out and let people live. And so when I bring it like that, hey, it's kind of have to deal.
I hear you there. I'm usually more known, not just on this show, but just in general, of being more belligerent. And so I go after and I attack all kinds of people. I'd like to bring it back towards the beginning of the interview when you mentioned bringing up to other people about slavery in the Bible. Is there a specific story or response from another person that stands out to you?
The thing is, I have these issues or these instances of a lot of this stuff happens on Facebook because not a lot of people like to debate me in person because although I am a nice, easygoing person, and I swear I'm not going to say this to be arrogant, I'm generally one of the smarter people in the room. I don't necessarily like to be, and I've talked to people about this recently where I think I'm just hanging around the wrong people, and so that's something that I need to change as far as in my real life where I need to hang around others. But people know me as the one who always has a point, and I always have a good point. So generally speaking, when those kind of arguments come up, people end up getting shut down. I had one especially where a guy was speaking while I was at lunch with him, and this was back in Texas, and then we were in a group of people, and we were having lunch together, and he just assumed that atheists have to believe in something because in his mind it doesn't make sense that you can, and they have to believe in this, and he was just making all these blanket assumptions, and I had to speak up, and I'm like, actually, I'm an atheist, and I don't believe anything that you're saying, and I called him out on that, and when I did and kind of broke it down to where it was, everybody at the table was just kind of like, all right then. They had a couple of softball questions, but that's really all there could be because when you got somebody that can actually back up the things that they're saying, there's really nowhere to go with it. There's really no sort of religious rhetoric or anything that you can pull off on me. So I'm really not the one to get in the arguments because people know that I don't open my mouth unless I know what I'm talking about.
All right. Well, thank you for the answer. And at least you're modest. That's the most important thing. Your modesty is what sets you apart.
Yeah.
All right.
I just want to make sure that I'm always like, because I guess in a way I could be unassuming in that way. Again, I have everything to back it up. Like I have some of those maybe extreme atheist views, I guess, but I know when and where to let it out.
All right. So apoplectics. I'm passing the torch. Tag.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to something you talked about earlier as well. You mentioned that your mother was religious and in the military, and that your father was an atheist. I'm wondering what type of dynamic they had, or how those values, like, did they talk to you about that as a kid, or did she take you to church, or how did that dynamic work?
None of those things. That's the interesting thing. Now, it was very tumultuous as far as within themselves. They had their own arguments when it came to it, and I would hear kind of secondhand comments about it, but I never actually heard them argue about it ever. And again, they never brought it to me. So that was always something very interesting. It was never something discussed. I actually heard it more from like me and my dad would visit like his side of the family sometimes. And my grandmother did take me to church a couple of times, but it was pretty innocuous. I was pretty young. I didn't really kind of, soak it all up. I was a light believer, but it wasn't something that was backed up when I went back home or anything like that. So I, I think I got it pretty well, or pretty, as far as not having to have so much pressure on me, especially moving so much. I went from Indiana to Georgia to Germany to Georgia to Germany to Tennessee to Oklahoma. I've been so many places. You never really get a good place to sit down and just kind of establish and sit there and, build up any of that religious energy. It just I just lived my life, and I never had to worry about the religion. So I guess that's why it's probably even so easy for me to get along with it or without it now.
So, I mean, it sounds like neither, and correct me if I'm wrong, so it sounds like neither of your parents kind of forced either one on you. They just kind of let you decide. Would that be correct?
Pretty much, because when my mom actually found out, she was shocked. Like, my mom didn't realize it until about, I want to say about 4 years ago or something like that. Yeah, about 3 or 4 years ago, she really realized, and I'm 33. We had talked about it lightly at one point, since my parents have been divorced, and my mom wasn't very happy about, she didn't like the fact that my dad was an atheist, and then, they had a nasty split when they did divorce. It was only a few years ago. But when she found out I was an atheist, she just kind of saw him as the scum of the earth at that point. And so when she found out that I was, she was just like, well, he influenced you. He did this. You're just going to be just like him. And she took it pretty hard at the time. But again, I even had to tell her the thing that I never had a conversation about atheism with my father until my mother told me that she didn't like it and that she had an issue with it. Once she told me she had an issue and she had an argument with me and all this other stuff, that's the first time I talked to my dad about atheism, and that was only about like 3 or so years ago.
Oh, wow, okay. And then just real quick, how would this affect the way you would raise your children? I just happen to know you have children, but if you wanted to touch on that a little bit, it seems like it could get into a long discussion, but do you have any plans for that? Or?
Oh, yeah, I've already done. Yeah, my daughter's an atheist. My daughter, she's already a non-believer. And I love it because I gave her information and I made her think about it. I didn't just force atheism on her. I didn't force her to be a non-believer, but she would say certain things like kids, young kids, these parents start their kids out early just trying to indoctrinate them. And they would say things to my daughter, and I would tell her to evaluate the things that she said. And then I would also make her think, because she's a pretty decent thinker. She gets that from me. She started talking about one time where she did go to church with my mom, and some of the things they let her, see or read in the passages. And I remember one thing that I said to her that really seemed to hit her is, I was like, so is the Bible all good, or did you notice if they made you cherry pick when you went into, when you read some of those passages? Did they tell you to read little things here and there and change the page and read something and change the page? Or did you read all of the context of the text? And she was like, they made me cherry pick. And I was like, oh, so they didn't want you reading all of the things at once. And I was just like, because did you know? And I let her know some of the, nasty things that are in the Bible. She's like, that's there? I was like, but how would you know unless they let you read it all? She was like, oh. And, that really struck a chord with her. And so she started thinking about it on her own. And my oldest daughter she's a non-believer early. Like I wasn't officially a non-believer until my, early mid-20s. My daughter's been a non-believer since she's about 6-7 years old, and I love it.
I wanted to congratulate you on having such a huge head start, because I know for a lot of us, we don't come to our lack of until much later in life. I don't think I came to mine until I was about 38 or so. So, but did have one follow-up question, and kind of ties into what you were talking about earlier with regard to in exchanges with people of a religious background and such. What do you think it is ultimately that causes these people to hold on so tightly to their beliefs? Well, I mean, for lack of better words, what is it that?
It's the not knowing, and something I've realized is I've been struggling with something recently where again I've unfortunately been the smartest person in the room, and I don't like that because I don't like to see myself as that. Because I know I don't know a lot. And the thing is, smart people know that. People who are smart enough to know they don't know enough. And I I myself have been struggling with acting out on that and just saying, you know what, I do know. Like, all these people think I know. I do know. And then I've had a couple of revelations where something would happen, and I would look at something like my wife's been going to school recently, and she brings me some of her books to read over things, and I'm like, I'm like a master of English. I can read just about anything. I'm a writer and all these things, and I'm reading this book, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, she's just doing massage therapy, but there's so many terms and things I'm not aware of. I'm like, I just like felt I was knocked down a peg again. I'm like, I don't know. Whereas I'm not afraid of that. Some of the people who I feel are so religious don't want to believe they don't know. They're holding on to saying, I have to know. I have to know what's going to be next and what's about to be there. And I feel that that's the thing that makes them hold on so tightly, is like being aware instead of not knowing. That not knowing kills them. And with us, people like us, we're just like, you know what? The not knowing is okay. We want to learn more, and then when we get to the end, we're okay knowing as much as we have instead of stopping at some point. We don't want to be stagnant. And so I feel that that's the biggest thing, is they just want to stop and just say they've already got it figured out.
All right, thank you for that. So Moose Gal from the chat, our biggest fan, she said, if I had kids, I would also tell them the truth about the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and the Tooth Fairy. Why start out lying to children? That's wrong. So I know that in my case, my children are much younger. But they understand that, just like some of their TV shows, they understand that the cartoons, that their TV shows are not real. They know that they're just pretend, that they're drawings from people. And I use that to relate the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy as well. I explain to them that that those were concepts, and it's okay to have fun even if something isn't real, just like they enjoy their TV show. So I kind of address that with my children, even though they're at such a young age. I'm wondering, your children being slightly older, we take that back, half a decade farther back with your children. Did you do anything different when you were raising your children in terms of Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy, or was it kind of a little bit more straightforward like what I had done?
I told them, well, because it mainly started with my oldest daughter, because my kids are 11 and 4. My oldest daughter, I immediately cut the whole Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy thing, just cut that out. I'm like, look, these are stories that everyone tells for, purposes of entertainment or whatever, so they can keep their kids in line, just like the rest of religion. But it doesn't, like, it's cool to think that those kind of things, it's just those concepts, but leave it at that. Now, television got a little bit tricky because I'm still kind of trying to explain that at some point. Like, my oldest daughter loves Dance Moms, and I'm like, please don't think that you should act like that. Please don't think that it's okay to let people. So reality TV is kind of the bane of my existence at the moment. And so I'm still trying to have to explain that even though it's real, it's not real, you get me? And my oldest one, she seems to get it. My youngest one, I'm bringing her into it. But yeah, entertainment, I do have to kind of get into that and what those concepts are. But I also have to think of myself, because like when I was younger, I remember I found out about the Tooth Fairy because I did lose one of my teeth, and I used to have a double twin beds, and I slept between them when I lost my teeth one time. And then my dad forgot to give me the money, and I was like, "Hey, the tooth fairy didn't come." And he goes, "Oh, my bad." And then he hands me the money, and my mouth drops. I'm like, "Wait a minute." And then like I went to school with this conspiracy theory. I'm like, I tell my friends, I'm like, "Hey guys, did you know about the tooth fairy?" And like, so we get in this big discussion. I I didn't want that for my kids. I didn't. So I just kind of laid it out for them early, just to let them know that, hey, when people start coming up to you with these kind of things and these kind of arguments, it's please understand that they're a little behind, but you know they'll get there with you one of these days.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. As far as the reality TV goes, I have a little way to go before that. So hopefully that horrible trend kind of calms down a little bit. It's time for us to move on to our next segment. I really appreciate the interview. It was really awesome. I'd like for you to stay around for the rest of the show if you want. So we are going to go over to our news from the Heretic Clark news desk. All right, so there's a HuffPost religion article. Sorry, that frog in my throat again. This article is about Black Lives Matter and the Trinity, recognizing how systems are connected when working for change. Just like normal on the show, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down. If you want to read the article real quick, you can. Pause the video, and then you can come back and see what we're saying. Okay. Oh, here is the article. It's quite a lengthy article, actually. It covers everything about the Trinity. What the article is basically covering, now that you've probably already paused and started reading it, Black Lives Matter and religion in the black community. And they talk about the Trinity, the individual entities in the Trinity, being separate, and how spirituality is very important for Black Lives Matter. Now, here on the show, you know, we are of the opinion, you know, certainly that all lives matter, but there is a serious crisis, very particularly in the black community, with violence and how that's being pushed forward. So my kind of take before we move on to the other clerics real quick, this article does go on to explain how religiosity is directly tied to Black Lives Matter, and how the Holy Spirit and the Holy Trinity actually address that. But after reading the article, I didn't actually see any evidence, go figure, that of the claim to support. And it really just kind of talks about how religion is so prevalent in the black community, and it also brings up Martin Luther King and how he talks about the triune God, powers and principalities, and it kind of moves forward from there. One little paragraph I'm going to read. What if it wasn't simply people from different walks of life working together? What if it was different movements locking arms in the struggle? What might the Black Lives Matter movement look like if it and we united our struggle with the remnant and spirit of the Occupy movement and the remnant and spirit of the anti-gun and anti-gun violence movements, anti-war movements, To continue with the theme of this essay, what if we create an activist trinity unifying the change-making efforts from these three distinct fronts? In my opinion, I think the Black Lives Matter movement would have moved a lot more forward, just like the rest of society, were it not for religion. A religion in and of itself, especially Christianity, you see in Christianity, you see in Islam, how other people are different, and different is scary, you know, that kind of shit. So that really pisses me off, and I think that our society would be a lot more forward were it not for religion. Does anyone want to jump in and then kind of comment on that a little bit?
Oh, definitely. For me, one, I'm all about Black Lives Matter. I feel like most of the movements that we've had in forever have to be Black Lives Matter. I actually wrote a blog recently called Black Lives Matter Detractors, where I got on some of the black people I knew who weren't down with Black Lives Matter. You know, but as far as it being a religious or spiritual kind of thing, I mean, everything kind of is with that, but it definitely doesn't need to be a religious experience. And I can say that definitely from my own personal take on it. Like, I know people who are not down with the movement, again, that are black, and, you know, though, and some of the most religious people I know actually, like, three of the most religious people I know that are black people aren't down with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm like, I don't understand that. But then also that kind of throws their whole case out the window with this article, to say that, there's all this spirituality and religiosity that goes with it. And it's really not the case. It can get along without any of that. It just has to, because all the Black Lives Matter is the same thing that Martin's been speaking, the same thing that Malcolm was speaking, the same thing that Marcus Garvey, the same thing about W.E.B. Du Bois. So many leaders and people for years have just been saying we matter as well as anybody else. And that really should, I can say, go along with any other movement, that we should all be equal. Don't count anybody else out. Black lives matter, gay lives matter, everything matters. But I think the thing that's really holding it back, I think, is one, some of the people who have hijacked the movement for something that it shouldn't be, like those people that interrupted Bernie Sanders at his speech. That was just fucking asinine. And the people who are trying to be so hard about it to some of the wrong people. The Black Lives Matter movement is something where really in its current incarnation was about getting the police to stop killing unarmed black people for no apparent reason. And therefore, there's no reason why they need to be talking to Hillary Clinton and downing her, or getting on Bernie Sanders and downing her, but not saying the same thing to the Koch brothers. Like, that's not even where it's like, it's misdirected as far as the people who are taking it on as leaders. They're not really putting their efforts into the right direction. And it's kind of like Occupy was. As noble as an effort as Occupy was, it's lost that focus, or it didn't really have much of a focus to start off with, and that's where the issue is. We really need to make the movement more concise, but not figure out, like, not have to get involved, the religious and the this, to that. Just, hey, have a main core message, and really that could help it be accepted by more people.
Great response. Great. So obviously, from the outside looking in, it's pretty easy to discern how religion, is so prolific in societies. In that, we touched on this in previous episodes. In that, people want to feel like they're part of something much bigger than themselves. That's why sports teams, have, record sales. Look at the Cowboys, Yankees, etc. In my personal experience in going into the quote unquote the black churches, that was the most fun that I'd had. I'd felt this electricity that was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. And perhaps, you attending some Baptist services, you experienced the same. The music, the gospel music speaks to me. And so it's easy to see how people get caught up in that because of this overwhelming sense for a need for community. But I really struggle with people who can't seem to take the time to read between the lines and really realize what the quote unquote book is all about. And so, with this regard to Black Lives Matter and the Trinity, I didn't read the article, but I think that there's a lot that we can gain by encouraging people to actually read the book, and look into, fact check and see what these people are saying and see if there's any merit to it. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
I mean, I just want to talk about all of these movements. Like, can't we isn't there a way we could just tie them all in together so everybody can fight for everybody? You know what I mean? It's like, I understand, like, I can join the Black Lives Matter movement and I could be a feminist as well as a white male, but isn't there, like, some way we could just all unify? And, like, I don't know, I've been trying to figure this out, because I think that's kind of part of the problem, is, like, it kind of alienates people, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Do you guys experience that at all?
You're absolutely right, because I do consider myself a feminist as a black male, and I know that probably throws some people off. I've got 2 daughters. I want to make sure that they have the same opportunities that anybody else has. The issue is that so many people do have a superiority complex. They have to think that their movement or their cause is more important than the next cause. The Save the Tatas has to be more important than, testicular cancer, or mine had a brain tumor, or we're about the vets. I know so many people are about, strictly the military. Like, oh, the military, we're the only people who need to have priority, and they get mad at Obama because the military budget's been cut, even though it hasn't been, or there's just been changes. So everybody, you're right. I think it should be where we should all be fighting for each other, but so many other people want to just be about that their movement, or they feel that they're more downtrodden than the next, and that creates such of this animosity.
Yeah, I think it ties into something you said earlier about the extremists of any group give that group a bad name kind of thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just wish that the level-headed, rational people of all these groups could get together and find a way that they can all help each other. You know what I mean? I want to use the term humanist, as Chad brought up in our chat, and I throw that term around a lot, and I say, I'm a humanist. I am for equality for everybody. I do care about black lives. I do care about feminism. But it's just easier for me to say humanist. But if you push me on each subject, I can identify as that. But I feel like if we all fought for humanism, and then so I've been throwing this term around, and I've actually gotten, oddly enough, I've gotten I don't know, like kickback from extreme humanists who say that's not what humanism is. So I'm even getting it from the humanists. Like, dude, I'm trying to fight for the betterment of everybody, and you're gonna freaking nitpick me on that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I just like banging my head against the wall. But I mean, so am I gonna list out? You know what I mean? I'm pretty much a socialist. I'm a feminist. You know what I mean? I'm for equality. I'm for gay rights. Like, I gotta have this huge list. Why can't I just have the one thing? I don't know. Okay.
No, I completely agree with that. You know, the loudest clown in the room is the one that gets the most attention, and I think that's what, you know, we've said a couple of different times. One thing about the movements, though, I am 100% all lives matter. It's a hashtag that they threw out a long time ago. I believe it may have been started by a conservative trying to detract from the Black Lives Matter movement. I can't prove that, though, but it wouldn't surprise me. So, I mean, I'm all about all lives matter, but as far as movements go, I do feel like there is a specific reason why at certain times we focus on individual issues. First off, as a society, we can only really focus on one issue at a time. That's just how it works. You know, we're as strong as our weakest link, and when we take it back to that, we focus on one issue at a time, not just for awareness, but for progression's sake. So when we take it back to looking at, you know, what's the big thing right now? You know, maybe they're on the verge of a discovery for cancer. So we not only have Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we have Cancer Awareness, we have all these awarenesses, but we especially bring up a cancer movement so that maybe it'll bring it to light, it'll bring things forward, and then they'll be able to get the funding that they need to finish their research. Or in the event of Black Lives Matter, we have the Black Lives Matter movement because unarmed black people are getting gunned down more and more, or it's becoming more and more prevalent. There's more talk about it. So we want to make sure that we educate and we bring awareness at that time. And because so many people can only focus on one thing at a time, as a society, there will be people that'll detract. You'll have your Black Lives Matter detractors. You know, you'll have all those individuals that try to pull away from those subjects and focus on other things. But the reality is that sometimes we have to sit down and focus on one thing at a time in order to have progression. If no one has any closing remarks on that, I can move on to our next segment. I get a okay for everyone to move on. Okay, so next is our scripture of the week. I believe that some more scriptures were put on the wheel, and we're going to...
No, there was a hiccup with that. I'm missing one scripture on the wheel, but I'm going to spin it anyway, but I got to work some stuff out. All right.
Okay, so we're playing scripture roulette at this point. There is one missing scripture, and if we land on that one, we're going to have to try and spin again. So what Matt is going to do is he puts the wheel in view of the camera, spins the wheel, grabs a scripture off and reads it for everyone, then we share stories where we laugh about how ridiculous it is. Maybe it'll even tie into the theme, who knows? Matt, would you please spin the wheel? I love that sound. It's so aesthetically pleasing.
This one's a big boy. This one's a big boy.
Is it Leviticus or Exodus? I don't know.
I just want to say, so I accidentally deleted my file of all the ones that I already made. So if I go back and make more, I might have doubles. So I'm thinking about switching to another book. So we're in the works on this, but it's going. So I don't know, whatever. I guess if we have any input from anybody, like if anybody wants to submit crazy scriptures or whatever, but okay. It's Leviticus. All right. This is a long one. It looks like it's pretty good. You guys ready? For whatsoever man he be that hath a blemish, he shall not approach, a blind man or a lame, or he that hath a flat nose, or anything superfluous, or a man that is broken-footed, or broken-handed, or crook-backed, or a dwarfs, or that hath a blemish in his eye, or be scurvy or scabbed, or hath his stones broken, that's his testicles. No man that hath a blemish of the seed of Aaron, the priest shall come nigh to offer the offerings of the Lord made by fire. He hath a blemish, he shall not come nigh to offer the bread of his God. That was a lot. I don't know. So basically, if you are in any way deformed, or your testicles are broken, or you have a blemish, you don't get the bread of his God.
You know what? I remember somebody put on there like, why have Google, because Jesus has all the answers. And it's like somebody commented, I'm not going to ask God where to find the midget porn. And that right there shows that God does not know where the midget porn is. I want to know where the midget porn is. And that's not going to help me find that. He's trying to outcast everybody. He's trying to put everybody with the scurvy and everything else. You know what you do with the scurvy? You tell him to eat an orange and he doesn't have scurvy. You'll be all right. He doesn't know where the midget porn is. I'm pissed off about that.
How does a creator, a.k.a. God, have the gall to blame him, his creations? He ultimately created everybody. It's like, you fucked up, dude. Come on. It's out of control to see these people like turn a blind eye to this stuff because their God specifically forbids, somebody who's handicapped or whatnot from entering, the kingdom of heaven. It's just this is facepalm inspiring. Good God.
I mean, everyone is made in God's image, sure, so I guess God is handicapped and diseased in every way. But, I mean, also, this kind of ties into the show indirectly. It's discrimination. That's exactly what it is. The 11th commandment should be, thou shalt hate all those unlike yourself. I'm calling it. I'm going to chisel it into some stone. We're going to throw it up at the courthouse underneath the other 10. Thou shalt hate all those unlike yourself.
You know what? I just realized something. God is Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. I don't know if y'all remember the episode because he's got, like you're saying, he's got every disease, every this, every that. I remember they told him, he went to the doctor and he's like, he was like, tell me, doc, give it to me straight. What do I have? He's like, you have everything. You have every disease imaginable, but they all work together in some sort of symbiosis, and so you're not dying somehow. That's it. C. Montgomery Burns is Jesus. There we go. Bam.
In Latin America, they call him Jesus, so we try to be inclusive. Okay. So, Matt, you got anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, this pretty much excludes everybody. Flat nose, any blemish. Dude, like, I don't know. Okay, all right. That's all I got.
No Cindy Crawford in heaven? Oh, shucks.
Dude, I don't know, man. But
it's
scab.
also,
if you have a scab, it says scabbed. You can't.
What if you just get an accidental walk-by stoning? Can you now not eat the bread of God? What if someone hits you with something and it's not your fault? Then you get a scab from it. I guess by that you wouldn't be able to you wouldn't be able to eat the bread of God, right?
I will play devil's advocate here and say that maybe they're claiming this is a sign from God that this person is in some way unworthy. But it's like, who fits this bill? Like, I don't know.
I think it was one person, and it was just kind of like No Ma'am or the He-Man Woman Haters Club, and they were just like, we're talking to you, Cindy. It's just like, Like she just didn't get it. It's just like the bitch with the flat nose, the one with the birthmark right here. You, Cindy, you're not coming in with us. You can't sit with us. Like it was the Mean Girls who wrote that.
Seats taken. Maybe it doesn't mean like going into heaven though. It talks about eating the bread of God. Maybe you just can't take communion that week or month or however they're doing it nowadays. They keep changing that shit on me. So maybe you just can't take communion that one time if your herpes is flaring up.
Weird. I don't know. It says you can't come nigh to offer the offerings of the Lord made by fire. I don't know what that means.
Fire when you burn, like you like chlamydia or gonorrhea?
Are we talking about like Salem witch trial burning?
Hold on, I should say it's Leviticus 21:18 through 21, if anybody can clarify.
So that's the weekly scriptures. Good job, man. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
I'm just messing with you. All right. So, yeah, if you are... I'm not going to use the word deformed, but if you have any type of non-perfect formality on your body, you either can't take communion, or you can't be burned at the stake as a ritual sacrifice, or you can't get into heaven. If anyone wants to chime in the chat or in the comment section, or send an email to hereticlerics@gmail.com or the belligerentatheist@gmail.com, we would love to hear your feedback. I would like to take us forward and talk about our Atheist Spotlight. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so our Atheist Spotlight for this week on YouTube is going to be The Secular Atheist. Okay, so kind of like with our other spotlights, the Secular Atheist will be featured on the right-hand side of the Heretic Cleric channel. Underneath Atheist Spotlight, he will appear at the top for the next week. As you can see, he has several different videos on his channel covering everything from objective morality, Bronze Age immorality, Pascal Wager, one of my favorite things to argue, especially in person, because it makes people confused and pee their pants a little and sometimes cry. There's the Ten Commandments, intelligent design. He's very good at portraying the message he wants to portray for that video. So I implore you all to check him out. Again, he's going to be highlighted on the right-hand side of Heretic Cleric's channel underneath Atheist Spotlight. Does anyone have anything they want to share about Secular Atheist? No? Okay, awesome. So now it has come to the point in our show where we start to wrap it up. Tonight we talked about religion and atheism in the black community. We talked about Black Lives Matter and how that is or is not a religious movement and why it should or should not be a religious movement. We had Buddy on the show, and Buddy talked about his past experience as well as relating some of his experience and some of the atrocities that he's had to face, not only as an atheist, but as a black atheist. We wrapped it all together. We had a scripture for this week. It was actually a three-verse scripture this week, all thanks to Matt. And that was our show for the night. I'd like to definitely thank Buddy for being on the show, Sir Chad of Denver, Matt the Apoplectic Atheist, and his little dog that's on his lap. And Chad, before we sign off for the night, you did want to bring up something real quick. So, Chad?
Okay, there we go. So, Buddy, we'd had a chance to talk the other week, and outside of our discussion pertaining predominantly to religion, you mentioned you have a passion for music, and you've created music underneath the moniker Brilliance Proper. Can you share with us any upcoming projects you're working on?
Yeah, actually, I've got a couple of loose songs that I've basically been just dying to get out just for whatever reason, not attached to any particular project. So those are coming out. I've got one that I'm putting together, the final finishing touches on it, called Paper Faith, where it actually has to deal with people's basic belief in money, the Constitution and laws, and of course religion. The text, the paper, and that people have too much faith in those kind of things. So that's coming up. I've also got a project that's produced entirely by my stepbrother. It's called Long Boxes and Milk Crates. It's all about basically comic books in hip hop. So kind of pulling all those things together in one big thing. So you can actually go and find me on facebook.com/brillianceproper. I'm on Twitter as @bproper, and also Instagram as brillianceproper. So you can find me all there, and it'll connect to everything else. But yeah, those are some of the big things I got going on right now, and a lot of production and direct videos and stuff. So things can be found all over with what I'm doing.
And anyone listening, I would highly recommend you guys look Buddy up, because he definitely is somebody who shares a plethora of thought-provoking, content. He does some writing, and I've really enjoyed, connecting with you, online and obviously now in person. So I highly recommend anybody looking to expand their knowledge to look up Buddy. And we'll have that link in the description box as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll pull those links in and drop in the description to this video. I did want to highlight Brilliance Proper, BRILLIANCE space PROPER. So that's Brilliance Proper. Check Buddy out. Check out his music. Check out his blog. Check out all of his cool stuff. I know I'm going to check it out because I'm very interested. I want to see if I'm going to end up doing a collaboration track with him, sometime in the future. I got a couple I'm working on right now. So, everybody, I'd like to thank you all for coming by. Hector Defendi, Moose Gal in the chat. Really appreciate you guys stopping by. And from all of us here at the Heretic Clerics and also Buddy, I want to say deuces.